Kanks barely had time to react before the human-s boots sent him sprawling across the hardened soil of Gorth 5. It was under the force of the impact that stunned him. It was the casual way the human had done it, like swatting away a mildly annoying insect. You call this a Deathworld? The human rolled his shoulders, surveying the environment as if unimpressed. That's adorable. Kanks gritted his teeth and struggled to his feet. His secondary heart was hammering. He had trained for cycles to prepare for combat against the so-called apex predators of Terra, but none of the data files had mentioned this. None of them had described the sheer absurdity of human adaptability. The gravity alone should have been tearing him apart. Karen, he hissed. This planet exceeds TAN standards by 30%. Yeah, it's a little heavy, the human admitted, cracking his knuckles. But we train in worse. Ever heard of Jupiter Station? It makes this place feel like a vacation. Kanks, he was a veteran of the Zavar Dominion, one of the most feared warriors in the sector. Yet this human spoke as if superior training was a birthright. The air is toxic to most species. The native fauna can digest bone. This world has endured for extinctional-level media impacts in a single millennium. Neat, the human said. You ever been to Australia? Kanks hesitated. Australia, the human grinned. A place back on Earth. It's like this, but worse. Venomous reptiles, giant insects, saltwater creatures that'll kill you just for looking at them funny. And the weather, sometimes it just decides to set the whole place on fire. Kanks clenched his jaw. Your kind should not exist. That's what they keep telling us. The human grinned wider. But here we are. Kanks calculated his next move carefully. He was faster, stronger. He should have had the advantage. But none of that seemed to matter against a species that just refused to acknowledge the basic rules of survival. He had seen humans fight with shattered limbs, keep moving after what should have been fatal injuries, even joke in the face of near-certain death. I do not understand your kind, Karanks muttered. Few do. The human clapped him on the shoulder as if they were old comrades. So, are we done here, or do you want another round? Karanks's pride screamed at him to continue, but his instincts knew better. This human wasn't just a warrior. It was something else, something terrifying. He took a step back, lowering his weapon. The human chuckled. Smart move. Before Kanks could reply, a distant explosion shook the ground beneath them. Both turned to see a thick column of smoke rising over the horizon. Kanks's communicator crackled to life, the emergency static slicing through the air. Human forces have launched, sustaining heavy casualties. The human side. Sounds like you guys missed the memo. Kanks's mind raced as the battlefield report streamed in. The Saveri warfront was crumbling under a force they had underestimated. He did not come alone, he growled. The human adjusted his gloves, glancing toward the horizon where the black smoke curled. Of course not. We don't do things halfway. Kanks activated his communicator, his voice sharp. Regroup at Sector Theta. Engage defensive measures. Reinforce our forward lines. A garbled reply confirmed compliance, but the human seemed That won't help. Kanks narrowed his eyes. You assume victory before the battle is over. No, the human replied, watching the distant flashes of energy weapons. I assume victory because I know what's coming next. A low rumble coursed through the ground, rhythmic and unnatural. Kanks's instincts flared with warning. It was not artillery, not an orbital strike, something else entirely. Then he saw them. They moved in perfect synchronization, humanoid figures clad in reinforced exosuits, weapons bristling with advanced targeting systems. But it wasn't their technology that made Kanks's pulse quicken. It was the way they advanced like predators who had already decided the fight was over. You fight with machines. Kanks sneered, masking his unease. Cowardice. Those aren't machines. They're just men who brought the right tools. Kanks had fought synthetic warforms before, but these were something else. The soldiers moved too naturally, too effortlessly. The exosuits enhanced their speed and power, but it was the minds behind them that made them lethal. They are still flesh and bone, Kanks said. The human gave him a sidelong glance. You'd think that, wouldn't you? Kanks signaled his forces to advance. Saveri warriors surged forward, the ground trembling beneath their charge. Plasma fire erupted in streaks of green and blue, lancing toward the human formations. Then the turn came. Kanks had seen effective infantry maneuvers before, but nothing like this. The humans anticipated shots before they were even fired, dodging and repositioning as if they could predict the flow of combat itself. They fired in measured bursts, cutting down advancing Saveri with chilling efficiency. The human beside him smirked. Your people fight like they still believe war's about numbers. Kanks spared his teeth. We are warriors, not machines. Neither are we. The human nodded toward the chaos ahead. We're just very good at what we do. Kanks watched as a group of his elites attempted to flank the humans, only for the turn to respond as if they had planned for it. A single soldier turned, launching a device that detonated. The resulting shockwave sent the Saveri skidding back, their armor barely holding. Before they could recover, precise bursts of kinetic rounds found weak points in their plating. Experience, the human answered. You're fighting like this is a war, the human said. We're fighting like it's survival. The Saveri were disciplined, bred for war, but they had rules, strategies built on predictable patterns. The humans had no such restrictions. They fought with instinct, adapting to every shift in momentum. They weren't bound by formations or rigid doctrine. The realization clawed at Kenks's mind. He was not battling an army. He was battling something far worse. He was battling predators. His communicator crackled again, this time frantic. Overrun forces collapsing. Fall back. Kenks's grip on his weapon tightened. His species had conquered countless systems. But here, against these seemingly fragile beings, they were unraveling. He turned to the human. "You're kind. You should not be capable of this." The human gave him a small, knowing smile. "You'd be surprised what we're capable of." The battle raged on, but Kenks already knew the truth. This war was lost. Kenks knew the war was lost, but surrender was not in his nature. His people did not yield. The Zavari dominion had stood for centuries, unchallenged by lesser species. Yet here, in the choking air of Gorth 5, the unthinkable was happening. The humans advanced with a brutality that was not born from desperation but from confidence. They did not hesitate, they did not falter. They pressed forward as if war was a puzzle they had already solved. Kenks's communicator flickered with overlapping stress signals. The command structure was collapsing, battalions routed by small, coordinated human squads that fought like apex predators hunting their prey. It was not sheer strength or technology that overwhelmed it was something far more dangerous: instinct. The human beside him, still unshaken, watched as Kenks's warriors fell back. His posture was loose, as if this battle was no more stressful than a morning drill. "You should probably call retreat." Kenks bared his teeth. "You think we run?" "I think you should," the human said, "while you still have anyone left to run." Kenks turned back to the battlefield. His soldiers had regrouped at a defensive line near the ridgeline, hurling energy blasts at the oncoming enemy. The humans, undeterred, broke formation, spreading out into smaller mobile units that worked through cover with impossible precision. Kenks could no longer deny it. The humans weren't just winning, they were enjoying themselves. His grip tightened around his blade. If they were predators, he would show them what it meant to hunt. With a roar, he surged forward, leaping into the fray. His warriors followed, emboldened by their commander's charge. If death was inevitable, they would meet it as Zavari should, facing their enemy head-on. Kenks struck the first human with a devastating blow, his blade carving through reinforced armor and sending the soldier sprawling. He spun, using his superior reach to knock another aside. He fought with everything in him, pushing back against the tide of human aggression. But the tide did not break. The humans adapted. They shifted tactics with unnatural speed, anticipating every movement. Their weapons found gaps in his defenses. Their strikes became more precise. Kenks grunted as a kinetic round struck his shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through his arm. Another impact slammed into his side. He fell to one knee, breathing hard, vision swimming. He had underestimated them again. The human from before stepped toward him, lowering his weapon. "You fought well." Kenks glared up at him, chest heaving. "Kill me and be done with it." The human shook his head. "Not how we do things." Kenks narrowed his eyes. "You show mercy." The human crouched beside him. "Mercy? No. We don't kill when we don't have to. Doesn't mean we forget." He nodded toward the battlefield where the last remnants of the Zavari forces were. "Take your people. Leave this world. Go home." Kenks snarled. "You think we will not return?" The human smiled, but there was no humor in it. He stood, stepping back as more humans arrived to secure the battlefield. Kenks's warriors hesitated, looking to their leader. He exhaled slowly. There was no victory to claim here, no honor in dying for nothing. He rose to his feet. "We will not forget this." The human nodded. "Neither will we." Kenks turned away, signaling his remaining soldiers to fall back. The Zavari had learned a harsh lesson today, one that would change the way they saw the universe. The humans were not just another species to conquer. There was something else entirely. Something worse. The silence aboard the warship was suffocating. Kenks sat alone in the command chamber, his claws drumming against the armrest of his throne-like chair. The battle was over. Gorth 5 was lost, but the echoes of that day still haunted him. The Dominion had faced setbacks before, worlds had been abandoned, wars prolonged, but this was something else. Never before had they met an enemy that changed the very definition of battle. The humans had not simply won through superior numbers or even superior weapons. They had won because they had something the Zavari had never encountered in an opponent: an instinct to survive, no matter the cost. Kenks reviewed the battle data for the 1,000th time. The humans moved as if the war was a natural part of them. Every encounter, every engagement, they adapted. They made no predictable moves, held no rigid formations. Their doctrine was no doctrine at all. It was simply the will to win, no matter what. His advisors had argued about what should come next. Some demanded retaliation and immediate counterstrike on another human-held world. Others whispered of diplomatic efforts, of understanding the nature of these creatures before making another move. Kenks said nothing. For the first time in his long and decorated career, He did not know the right answer. The doors to the chamber hissed open, and High Strategist Zalek entered, his reptilian features tight with unease. You have been silent since the retreat. The Dominion demands answers. What shall we do? Kanks failed. The humans do not fight for territory. They do not fight for resources. They do not even fight for conquest. He turned his gaze to Zalek. They fight because it is what they have always done. Their world is a crucible, and they are its product. To them, war is not an obstacle. It is their natural state. Zalek narrowed his eyes. You think they cannot be beaten. I think they cannot be broken. Kanks, and therein lies the problem. Zalek considered this. If we do not act, the Dominion will see it as weakness. The High Council will not allow us to retreat indefinitely. Kanks let his claws click against the metal armrest. We do not retreat. We learn. Zalek tilted his head. What do you propose? We have underestimated them once, Kanks said. We will not do so again. I will return to the capital. I will speak before the High Council. We must prepare, not for another battle, but for a war unlike any we have ever fought. Zalek's tail twitched. And if they refuse, if they demand immediate retaliation, Kanks's jaw tightened. Then they are fools, and they will lead us to ruin. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Zalek nodded. Very well. I shall see to the fleet's withdrawal. As the strategist left, Kanks turned his attention back to the empty void beyond the viewport. Somewhere beyond the sea of stars, the humans were preparing as well. He knew it. They would not be idle. They would not grow complacent, because they knew something the Zavari were only just beginning to understand. A war was coming, and this time, the humans would be ready for them. Kanks stood before the High Council, his expression severe. The chamber, a grand and towering structure of carved obsidian and radiant crystal, held the most powerful minds of the Zavari Dominion. They sat in a semicircle, their scaled features betraying nothing as they listened. The air was thick with tension, a silent acknowledgement that they had suffered their first true defeat in generations. The humans must not be ignored, Kanks began, his voice steady. They are unlike any adversary we have faced. If we do not recognize their nature, our empire will suffer further humiliation. Councillor Voda, an elder whose spines had dulled with age, regarded Kanks with a measured gaze. You speak as if they are more than a minor anomaly. We have fought greater foes and endured. The humans hold but a fraction of the territory we do. Their fleets are smaller, their numbers fewer. What makes them so dangerous? Kanks clenched his jaw. They do not fear death. They do not break. They do not adhere to the logic of war that has guided all civilizations before them. They thrive in chaos, and they make war as if it is woven into the fabric of their existence. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some dismissed his words. Others contemplated the gravity of his claim. You suggest they are beyond our ability to defeat? Another counselor asked. Skepticism laced in his voice. Kanks shook his head. No, but they will not be beaten by the means we have relied upon for centuries. Their victories are not won by superior weapons nor superior numbers. They win because they refuse to lose. Vacker exhaled through his nostrils. Then what do you propose? If they are such an enigma, how do we respond? Kanks let his gaze travel across the chamber. We must evolve. We must study them as they study us. We must become unpredictable, just as they are. The Dominion has ruled through dominance, through brute force. That'll not work here. We must change or we will fall. The chamber fell into silence. The weight of Kanks's words settled upon them all. The Zavari had never been forced to adapt. They were the apex of the known galaxy. The conquerors. Now, for the first time, they had encountered something they could not simply crush beneath their mind. Finally, Vaca leaned forward. We will consider your words, Commander Kanks. But know this, we do not yield to inferiors. If the humans seek war, war is what they shall receive. Kanks bowed slightly but said nothing more. He knew their pride ran deep. It was not something that would be cast aside in a single meeting. But the seed had been planted. The future of the Dominion depended on whether they could accept the truth before it was too late. As he left the council chamber, Kanks gazed out into the void beyond the towering city of the capital world. War was coming whether they wished it or not. And the humans were already prepared.